The street was quiet except for the distant hum of traffic, the kind of calm evening where nothing dramatic was supposed to happen. Mrs. Eleanor Harris, a gentle, silver-haired woman in her late 70s, walked home from the small grocery store she'd been visiting for decades. Her steps were slow but steady, her arms carrying a modest bag of bread, milk, and the tea leaves she loved so much. She had lived in this neighborhood most of her life, watching it change, watching people come and go, but lately, she had noticed something different, a certain coldness, a lack of the neighborly warmth she once knew. That night, as she crossed an empty stretch of sidewalk, 3 teenage boys appeared from the shadows. They were laughing loudly, their voices echoing against the walls. She recognized them vaguely. They had been loitering outside the convenience store earlier, shoving each other and tossing trash onto the street. She thought little of it at first, but as they walked toward her, the air seemed to shift. "Hey, Grandma," one of them sneered, stepping into her path. "What's in the bag?" "Cookies for us." Eleanor tightened her grip on the groceries. "Please, boys, let me pass. I'm just heading home." But instead of moving aside, another boy snatched at her bag, pulling it roughly. She stumbled backward, her thin frame colliding with the cold brick wall behind her. The bread fell onto the dirty pavement. The leader of the group, tall, with a smug grin, shoved her lightly at first, almost as if to test her reaction. But then the second shove was harder, enough to send her to her knees. Pain shot through her hip. For a moment, everything froze. Eleanor's heart pounded, not just from the pain but from something deeper, a wave of humiliation and anger she hadn't felt in years. Then, before the boys could laugh or grab more from her, a voice rang out from behind them. "Hey!" The boys turned. Out of the shadows stepped a man in his early 40s, broad-shouldered, wearing a simple hoodie and jeans. His face was familiar to Eleanor, though she hadn't seen him in years. It was Daniel Carter, the boy who used to live 3 houses down when he was a child. Back then, she had given him cookies after school, taught him how to tie a tie before his first school dance, and once even stood up for him when older boys bullied him at the park. Daniel's eyes were cold now, fixed on the teens. "Pick it up. All of it," he said, his voice low but razor sharp. The tallest boy scoffed. "What, you gonna make us?" Daniel stepped closer, his presence alone making them flinch. "Try me." The boys hesitated. Something in Daniel's stance told them this was not the kind of man who bluffed. He didn't shout, didn't posture, he just looked ready. Ready to defend her. When they didn't move, Daniel closed the gap in 2 strides, grabbing the leader by the collar. The boy's bravado vanished instantly. "You think pushing around an elderly woman makes you tough?" Daniel growled. "When she was your age, she was feeding kids in this neighborhood while their parents worked double shifts. She's the reason half the people here even had a safe place to be. And you're nothing but cowards hiding behind each other." The boy's friends quickly stooped to the ground, scrambling to gather the bread and milk. Their hands trembled. Daniel released the leader but kept his glare locked on him. "If I ever see you near her again, you'll regret it. And trust me, I keep my promises." They mumbled apologies, half-hearted but enough to show fear, and took off down the street. Eleanor exhaled, realizing she'd been holding her breath. Her knees ached, and her groceries were a little bruised, but nothing was broken. Daniel helped her up gently, his expression softening. "Mrs. Harris," he said quietly, "I'm sorry I wasn't here sooner." She smiled faintly, her eyes glistening. "You came when it mattered, Daniel. That's enough." They walked together toward her house, and as they went, they talked. About old days, about neighbors who had moved away, and about how the world seemed to have changed. But Daniel promised her one thing: she would never walk home alone again. That night, word of what happened spread quickly. People in the neighborhood began to pay more attention, checking in on Eleanor, walking her to the store, even cleaning up the graffiti the teens had left behind elsewhere. It was as if Daniel's act of stepping in had reminded them all of something they had forgotten. Community isn't just about living close to each other, it's about standing up for one another. As for the boys, they avoided Eleanor from that day on. And though she never saw them apologize again, she hoped they had learned something, that strength isn't about power over the weak, but about protecting those who can't fight back. Eleanor went on with her quiet life, but she carried a new sense of comfort. In a world that often felt harsh and fast-moving, that night reminded her, and everyone around her, That kindness and courage still existed, and they could change everything in a single moment.